Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm here with Tamar Lando, and I'm very excited that her film Land with No Rider will be opening on the 17th of April at Sky Cinemas in the Rail Yard. Tamar, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
The film is called Land with No Rider. It premiered locally at the Santa Fe International Film Fest in October, and this is the next chance that people in Santa Fe are going to have to see it. So please tell us everything we need to know about the movie.
Um, that's a tall order. Well, it's first of all, I should say it's playing first in Santa Fe and then going on to play at the Guild in Albuquerque and then at Taos Film Festival. So we're hitting all three cities. And the film is about four aging cowboys in a remote part of New Mexico. It's the southwestern corner of the state, just below the Gila Forest, in a place called the Mimbres River Valley. And the film is it's a documentary that follows these guys around and deals with basically the disappearance of their world. They're the last men working, they're some of the last men working cattle out there. And there's not a lot of young guys taking it up, but it's really an exploration, kind of an intimate exploration of what it's like to lead that kind of life from the inside.
Wow. And I just got to say, I love the film, and I'm so happy that it's coming back to Santa Fe. You have a local producer on it, Hunter Robert Baker. What can you tell us about Hunter Robert Baker?
He's been wonderful. It's been great to work with someone he's based in Santa Fe, and that's in a lot of ways a world away from where we shot the film. Where we shot it is really out in rugged country, mountainous, rocky, rugged country, cowboy and mining. And yeah, it's been great to have Hunter on it. He's incredibly energetic and he knows the whole Santa Fe Albuquerque world a lot better than I do. And so we've teamed up on this to get it out in the state more widely.
And so April 17th in Santa Fe, and what is the date in Albuquerque?
On Albuquerque, we're starting on the 20th, and it runs through the 22nd, and two screenings each day.
And that's at the Guild?
That's at the Guild. And then we're going to Taos Film Festival right after.
And are you opening night at the Taos Film Festival?
We are, yeah. We're opening night and super excited about that. The film is very much a New Mexico film. It's all told in their voices, in the voices of these four men. There's no external narration, no text cards. It's not in, it's not educational in the way that it's not didactic. It's really just being dropped into the world of these men with them and hearing directly from them. And although the film is very much a portrait of that life, there are issues that I think touch on New Mexicans anywhere in the state that are just below the surface of what you see on the film. So
And
to do with
you have some wonderful interviews in the film. What can you tell us about your process in securing those interviews and then when you're actually conducting the interviews?
the film was made over almost 10 years. It's a longitudinal study. So I went out there as a photographer, as a still photographer, and I was just sitting in. There were two bars in the mountains, mining and cowboy bars, and I just parked it in there and waited to meet people, and I'd make a photograph of them, when I met them, or would try to go back to their house and photograph them inside their home. And I just got to meeting people like that. And one of the first people I met who became my closest friend there is a guy named Kentucky Tom. And Kentucky Tom, on that first trip, he said, "Tamar, you've got to meet the old cowboy. You've got to meet the old cowboy." And I was rushing the next morning. I had to be on a flight out of El Paso, and this is, I don't know, 3.5 hour drive away. And it was getting to be almost dark. And I said, okay, well, where's the old cowboy? And he said, he's another 8 miles up the road. Anyhow, we're very far at that point from any highway and I said, fuck it, let's do it. Let's just do it. So we go up there, and here's this old man who's chomping on a cigar, sitting in a hardware store, an old defunct hardware store across the street from where his ranch house used to be. The ranch house burnt to the ground. He took a mattress, plunked it in the old hardware store, and was living out his days in that hardware store. And that day, that evening, we just talked, and he told me these incredible stories, and he had a very beautiful, deep, resonant voice. It was one of the most beautiful voices I'd ever heard. And I was just incredibly, I was completely enraptured. And I think they thought they'd never see me again. And I got on the plane the next day, and that was that. And then I was in grad school at the time, and I kept coming back year after year to photograph, and meet more people at the bar and later at a post office and hanging out at a gas station. And so over the years like that, I just come for a week or so every year, and I got to know them pretty well. And what started out as this kind of casual encounter grew deeper. And yeah, I couldn't get John's voice. John Fowler is the cowboy I was just describing to you, and I couldn't get his voice out of my head. So eventually I decided to make the film.
And he's one of three cowboys in the film that are, losing. The title is Land with No Rider, so they're losing the ability to continue on in their work as cowboys.
For cowboys, and they're up against a lot of challenges, huge number of challenges. So one thing is I think of it as three different challenges from three different directions. So one thing is the environmental challenges. There's been a horrible drought, and during the years that we were filming, especially in 2021, 2022, there was a massive drought. And a lot of ranchers out there and throughout the state of New Mexico ended up having to reduce their herds by huge numbers. So one estimate that I read recently was that in 2022, on average, New Mexico ranchers reduced their herds by 43%. That's astronomical. Think about cutting almost half of your herd. So what happened is that there was no water, and the way that these cow-calf operations go is that you're running the cows for most of the year on pasture. And in order for them to have grasses to eat on that pasture, you have to have rain that makes the grass grow. And then when there's no rain, there's no grass for them to eat. So you end up having to buy feed for them for a much longer part of the year. Normally you would buy feed a bit in the winter, but now because there's no water, you're buying feed for a really big part of the year, and also feed prices are skyrocketing. So suddenly all of these ranchers have no way to run the same number of cattle on their land, so they have to sell off. So that's that's been one enormous challenge. Another enormous challenge is just the way that the industry is set up. And this is something that we've talked about for decades in this country. But basically, the profits go to the packer. The profits go to the meat packer. And this is the meatpacking industry is consolidated into these four enormous companies who have a stranglehold on the prices that cattle ranchers are able to get for their cattle. And on the other end, on the retail end, they're dictating the prices to the grocery store. So they're jacking up the prices at the grocery stores while paying minimal prices to the cattle ranchers, and they're taking in all the profits. And this is something that Democratic, Republican um, presidents have tried to get under control, and nobody has managed to break the power of the packer. So it's just a very, very difficult industry for the cattle ranchers in New Mexico. And then lastly, there's just the fact that this is a really hard life. These guys work really, really long hours, and it's really hard, and your profits are really uncertain, and you're highly dependent on the climate, on the weather. And I think a lot of young people are looking for a more comfortable life where they don't have to deal with those kinds of uncertainties.
Well, and there's a wistful sentiment to it of these guys being a dying breed. Do you want to say anything about that tone?
Yeah, Jacques, I fell in love with the old timers. They have, they are a dying breed, and even the young guys who are going into ranching don't have, for me, the magic that these old timers had. They just, they're just a different breed of men. They're rough around the edges, heart of gold. You know, they can be really abrupt and tell you exactly what's on their mind one minute, and another second they're on a big drunk or whatever. And but their heart is but they're gold. They, you know, their sense of humor is incredible. Their heart, and to me, a kind of straightforwardness and telling things like it is, accepting things the way they are, and still this just incredible magic. Like really the kind of, this is a very non-romantic film, um, intentionally so, but there is for me still that magic of the textures, the details, the grit that you see in all the big westerns that we fell in love with. They have it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the way that they're suffering, but they seem to mask it fairly well. They're forever tough guys, but they are definitely in pain. Was there was that a big part of what you were dealing with in the making the film?
You know, pain is an interesting word, and something that other people who see the film sometimes say is lonely. I can't believe how lonely it is out there. And sometimes I think that you and I feel more pain and loneliness um, watching their lives than maybe they do. Uh, I think that there's an experience of aloneness for them. And at one point, one of the main characters, Ramon Baca, does talk about being lonely, but I think it's more just what you're used to. Uh, you know, we live these very fast-paced lives sometimes in the city, and we meet up with a lot of different people in the course of a week, and their things are a lot slower, and you spend a lot of time on your own, and um, it's alone rather than lonely, I think, in some cases. And then the pain, you know, one of the things that one of the things that the film addresses is, yes, what I think these men all have a sense that their world is coming to an end. Both they're toward the end of their life in the film, and also the way that they've been ranching and the culture around it, the traditions around it, are changing. And and so yes, there was for me a fascination about hearing from them in their words, what that felt like. Um, but just as strong, I think, was their articulation of what runs deep in them, in that old cowboy ethos, that is still so beautiful to watch. And I think seeing it in a documentary form rather than, in the form of a narrative feature where it's scripted, just hearing from these men who are not famous, who are not, you know, extraordinary in the ways that we have of delineating that. It's just very, very beautiful and very moving.
I thought so too. And you had we already spoke about Hunter Robert Baker, a producer on the film. Were there other local collaborators that you can mention?
Everybody in the Mimbres Valley, which is where the film was shot, really helped out. They really just came together. The lady Sandy Karras at the cafe who used to run the cafe, she helped. She'd make us chocolate. She made this chocolate cake, and she made us meals. And um, at another cafe that's since closed down, they introduced me to all kinds of people, ranchers in the valley when I was first starting out. And the lady at the post office, when the bars ran dry that I was camped out at, I cut a deal with her, and our deal was that I'd kind of hang back in the back of the post office. This was in a town called Faywood, and she would introduce me to every person who walked into the post office, and I'd get to talk to them and see if I wanted to photograph them. And that's how I met Ramon Baca, one of the main characters in the film. Just he walked into the post office, so people really. Yeah, and oh, how could I forget Ernie Taylor, who let me stay in his cabin the whole time when we were filming. I mean, this was like, incredible friendship and hospitality. So yeah, people really, I'm not talking here about film industry people, I'm talking about just people in the community who really, really gave of themselves and supported in every way they could the making of this film, even though I was this is my first film and they had no idea what to expect.
It's beautifully shot. It's wonderfully lit. I had no idea it was your first film, so congratulations on that. What else can you tell us about Ramon Baca?
Ramon was this incredible spirit. So actually, the full story of the post office was that this lady was introducing me to every person who walked in. And they were fine, but not particularly interesting to me photographically. And then all of a sudden, this old man shuffles in, and she chit-chats with him for about 5 minutes. And I am completely fascinated by this man. I mean, what he's wearing, I mean, he's wearing these suspenders which have a kind of hunting pattern on them, and then a camouflage pattern. And then he's got like two hats on, one above the other. And he just looked like he was exactly the kind of person I wanted to talk to. And they talked for 5 minutes, and then he left. And he was the only one that she didn't introduce me to. And I went up to her right after. I was like, what happened? And she said, "Oh, he's just an old cowboy. I didn't think you'd be interested." So I ran out the door. I got to him right as he was getting into his truck, and I followed him home. I asked, "Can I come over?" And we started talking. And he was to me just this. I mean, he was an old man at the time, but he had this just unbelievably youthful, life, lively, full of life spirit, soul that was um, every day to him was a miracle. The sun, the rain, the moisture, the grasses, everything felt like, even at 80 years old, was a miracle. Um, and he'd sing to himself all the time, you see that in the movie as well. He's just constantly singing to himself. And yeah, I fell in love with Ramon. He had this way of telling stories that no matter how far back they stretched, if they were about the original homesteaders on the land, or if they were about the Native Americans who were on that land for him, or if it was about Noah's Ark. There's a long segment in the film where he talks about Noah's Ark. He's right there with them. It's not a history story. It's not a lesson that he learned in church. He's right there with Noah as he's building the ark. He's right there with the Native Americans who were skinning a buffalo, and there was something just, um, yeah, truly incredible about being around a man like that.
Tamar, let's take a short break for these messages. And when we come back, we'll talk more with director Tamar Lando. The film is called Land with No Rider, and it opens at Sky Cinemas in Santa Fe on April 17th. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Tamar Lando. She's the director of the upcoming film Land with No Rider. It opens on April 17th at Sky Cinemas in the Rail Yard. And then it goes on to play at the Guild Cinema in Albuquerque. And then it will be opening night at the Taos Film Festival. Tamar, it's been so much fun so far. And we were just talking about Ramon Baca and the way you met him. And tell me a little bit more about small town charm and what do you think it is that captivates you about these small towns and small town people?
Yeah, well, there really aren't any towns there to speak of. I mean, the nearest town is Silver City, and that's about a 50-minute drive from where these guys are. But I think just the wilderness and this the line between, I've grown up in cities my whole life in Los Angeles, and now I live in New York. And just the wildness of being out there is very, very powerful. You're in landscapes that where you hear, you can make a 360-degree turn around yourself and not see a single human or a human structure. Um, if a gate is pushed open, you hear the creaking of the steel or metal, like, and that tiny little sound fills the entire landscape because it's just, there isn't, there aren't cars whooshing by or sirens or people talking. It's just an incredibly powerful. It's rugged. It's remote. It's incredibly powerful. It can, if you let it, it can kind of shake you to your bones. So all of that is attractive. It pulls you in, and it's also good for filmmaking. There's a huge drama to the American West, I think. It's undeniable. It's in the land itself, and of course, all the big westerns build dramas around it. But I think it's still very much there.
And you live in New York City?
I do. I live in New York for the past 12 years or so. I also teach philosophy at a university here, and yes, in the years when I was making the film, I was kind of shuttling back and forth between these two completely different worlds, the academic New York world and pretty much as far as you can go, really, on the other end.
Well, and is it sort of a John Locke philosophy, or how would you, uh, in philosophical terms, talk about the lives that these men lead?
My area within philosophy is logic, so it's very connected to math and formal stuff. So not exactly cowboys, but I do think that um, the film is philosophical in a broader sense because it's about how to live, and it's about the ethos that these men have, and um, a set of attitudes um, towards loss, towards material possession, um, towards commitments that you make to other human beings, self-reliance, all of these questions have to do with how we live. And for one reason or another, these men and the generation that they belong to of cattlemen have taken up a set of attitudes that are just very different from what you see in places like New York and LA. And that I think has a lot to be said for it.
Well, and for those listening on the radio, Tamar is a pretty young lady. Tamar, what can you tell us about their generation versus your generation?
I think it's a particular generation of American men, right? But I think that my generation, I mean, famously is so much more self-involved, self-centered, flaky, uncommitted to things, cynical. Um, Geez, I didn't realize I was going to be so hard. But yeah, their generation or those men that I was dealing with, they have very strong commitments to a certain way of dealing with people, being straightforward, being true to your word, being direct, even when it's hard to do so. We kind of hide behind, my generation hides behind confrontation or friction, tension. They say it. It's not, they know it's not fun to say certain things, but I think they'd rather say it. There was what was the Tommy once? One of the first things he said to me, is it easier to climb up a tree and tell a lie or stand on the ground and tell the truth? You're going to a lot of trouble to climb up that tree and tell a lie. It wasn't directed at something I was saying, but we were having conversation about kind of how people communicate. So I think there's a lot of beauty uh, in those commitments and in the straight tell it like it is way of dealing with people.
And what else can you tell us about Tommy?
Tommy is a very good friend. He's the one I'm closest to out there, and he's not in the movie, but he was the first guy that I met in the bar when I talked to you about that. I was hanging out on that first trip in a bar, waiting to meet people I could photograph, and he walked in to this bar, and he was the most incredible looking person I had seen during that week, and he had imagine tall, lanky, curved spine. And he started playing pool, and he's a guy who can hit the ball in the hole after touching 5 walls. So you hit the pool ball and it bounces off of 5 walls before you get it into the hole. That's how good of a player he was. And um, he was just really incredible. And at the time I was looking in my fantasy, I wanted to photograph the inside of a ranch house. And I had been looking for that the whole trip, the whole week, and didn't come anywhere close. And at the end of playing pool, when I was photographing him while he played, he said, "Hey, do you think that you could you send me a picture, one of the photographs you took? Because I don't have any photographs of myself." And I said, "Yeah, that'd be fine. The easiest way, I was shooting film, so the easiest, like, negatives. And so the easiest way, I'll just scan in my negative and I'll email you a photograph when I'm back home." And he looks at me and he says, "Honey, you don't understand. I live in an old ranch house that was built in 1865 that I dug out of a pile of rat shit. I don't have an email address and I've never been on the internet." I was like, "You live in an old ranch house? Do you think I could follow you home, Tommy?" And I think he looked at me kind of funny and he let me follow him home. And he put on some beautiful old country music, which was the same kind of music that I listened to on this old turntable, and I had free reign in his house, and it was a magical time, and we've become really close since then. He's one of my closest friends, so yeah.
Wow, he sounds like quite a character, and I'm a little bit jealous that he's never been on the internet. Now, the uh the main cowboy in the movie, he's got some pretty piercing eyes. What do you want to say about his look in general?
I think you're talking about Putt, although there's really, for me too, Putt and Ramon get the most time in the film. We've talked about Ramon, but Putt is an older gentleman who has been married 6 times. And he's, um, when I say heart of gold, I mostly think about him actually. He has had a very rough life, riven by tragedy multiple times over. But he has this incredibly soulful connection to the mountains out there, to the water out there, to the land, and especially to country music. This is a big thing for him. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, George Strait. These are things that I drive in his truck with him to the lake to go fishing, and we listen to all of this music, and it kind of he taught me to think about it in a different way, which I think is the right way to think about it, as storytelling. It's very, if you think about country music, it's kind of pared down musically a lot of times compared to other genres, but and it the best of it, I think, are these pared down just stories of life, and of longing and of loss, that strike really hard and that are told very plainly. And I think that in the different phases of his life and in the different things that he went through, he always um, kind of took solace in the stories that are told through that music. And yeah, at one point he said to me, I like Johnny Cash because I've lived it. And I said, what part of it have you lived? And he said, all of it.
Tamar, you and the local producer you have, Hunter Robert Baker, you've been doing a lot to get this film out into the world. Can you tell me a little bit about independent filmmaking and about also distribution and getting an independent film like this out into the world, particularly in New Mexico?
Yeah, so Hunter and I have been working really closely, and it's been a really fantastic collaboration. But as you know, it's incredibly hard for independent filmmakers to get their films out there to wider audiences. And we've had a very strong festival run. So we've been able to take it around the country, to lots and lots of different cities. But now we're also interested in doing short theatrical runs, and that's what we're starting here in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. And yeah, it's you know this more than anyone probably, Jacques, but independent filmmakers are out there making making films on a very small budget. Everything is super tight, and people really aren't buying docs right now. It's a very, very hard market. So oftentimes it falls on the filmmaker when you're nearing the end of the festival run, which is our case. We've been on the festival circuit for about a year. Then the question is how to get it out there more broadly. And so we have a number of theaters in New Mexico, Texas, California, that are independent theaters that are going to screen it, and we're looking to build more relationships with more theaters, especially in the Southwest, places like also Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Colorado, places where there's a strong ranching culture. Um, and really just looking to get the word out there in any way we can. So this is incredibly helpful to do talk shows like this.
Well, you've been a wonderful guest, and it was so exciting to hear about two of the cowboys in the film, both Ramon Baca and Putt. But you only briefly talked about Tom Para. What else can you tell us about Tom Para?
Yeah, Tom Para is another fascinating figure. So he is slightly younger than the others, and actually quite a bit. Probably about 15, 16, 17 years younger. And he is managing a ranch for, he doesn't own the land himself. He takes care of the ranch for somebody else, unlike the other characters in the film. But he was born and raised in that valley, and in fact, his father and grandfather were as well. So he has very deep ties to the land. But because it's a much bigger ranch with more resources, he's been able to modernize it in ways that some of the other ranchers are not able to do. So he has installed new wells, some of which go 1,000 feet into the ground and pull up water using solar panels. And then he has a gravity flow system that distributes that water to all corners of the ranch, with drinkers set up every mile for the cattle. So little tires, big tires that are filled with water, pumped water. He's rotating pastures. So there's a lot of he put in, I think, 40 miles of road on the ranch, created roads out of nothing, basically. So he's put in a lot of improvements, and I think is much more um, minded that way.
And he's the gentleman with the glass eye.
No, the gentleman with the glass eye is John Fowler. He's the one who lives in the old hardware store. Yeah, John Fowler is his family's a real mainstay in that country. Um, they've been around for a long time, and everybody knows them. Yeah.
Can you tell us anything else about John Fowler?
John Fowler he was a storyteller. Besides the voice, which I told you about, this deep, beautiful voice, he had an incredible memory. And his memories would really went all the way back to stories that he was told about the original homesteaders, battles on that ground between Native Americans, in particular Apache, and the new Anglo settlers. Um, and yeah, he was for me in some way the quintessential cowboy. Stetson hat, um, uh, dust on the floor of his, these big cowboy boots and beautiful cowboy boots, and dust on the floor of his hardware store, and just an incredible storyteller. I used to love to just drive over. I was staying in a cabin not far from where he lived, and I'd drive over there in the mornings and just listen to his stories.
Well, I think that's pretty much a show, Tamara. Is there anything else you can tell us about Land with No Rider before we go?
Yeah, I think that cattle ranching and agriculture is a really big part of the state. And going into these screenings in New Mexico, I hope that it's an opportunity for people in Santa Fe, in Albuquerque, and in Taos um, to spend some time with their neighbors on screen, to spend some time kind of being dropped into the world of these old ranchers, and really feel what that life is like from the inside. So thank you to anyone who wants to come out and see it. And I'll be also running some Q&As at all of those places after select screenings, so you can look them up and come say hello in person if you'd like. And
And
thanks so
it's,
much, Jacques, for hosting me.
hey, you got it. So April 17th, it opens at Sky Cinemas in Santa Fe, and then it goes on to play at the Guild Cinema in Albuquerque. And then it's opening night at the Taos Film Festival. It's the inaugural Taos Film Festival, and the Santa Fe International Film Festival is a sponsor. So please do check out the Taos Film Festival and Land with No Rider for opening night. We'll see you next week.